whether you discuss today, tomorrow, or before. It is a very contemporary topic, and this topic or environment, it is attached to the every part of our life. And in this time, I must congratulate Dr. Priya Lakshmi, under whose leadership Vasundhara The Green Society has come up with this webinar national level, and the so eminent speaker, those who are experts in their own field. I feel that with this and with the deliberation and discussion for coming 4 days, we will come up with the good resolution, and some meaningful result will come out of this webinar. And my students and the students from other university, those who have joined us today and those who will be watching it through our YouTube channel will be immensely benefited with the deliberation of our experts. With this, once again, I congratulate the Vasundhara The Green Society under the leadership of Dr. Priya Lakshmi and our today's keynote speaker, Dr. Pradeep ji. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, moving forward, the second edition of the National Webinar Series with the theme Environment Spectrum of Life aims to create, demonstrate, deliver information that is of interest to the students on various aspects of environmental jurisprudence, covering all the legal aspects related to the environment by the renowned speakers all over the country. The event's objective is to help the participants to acquire knowledge, values, and practical skills to participate in a responsible and effective way for management of the quality of the environment. The spectrum of life in the Hall of Biodiversity is an evolutionary trip through amazing diversity of life on the earth. The 1500 specimens represent a wide range of plants and animals from the smallest microorganisms to the aquatic giants. Environment plays an important role in healthy living and existence of life on planet Earth. And for further details, I would be honored to invite Dr. Pradeep Mehta, sir, to throw some light on the matter. In case the participants have any queries, we will be conducting a question and answer round at the end of the session. Kindly raise your queries through chat box, if any. Sir, please.
Right. Thank you, Neha, for that lovely introduction. And it's an honor and a privilege to be part of this, webinar. Thank you, Professor Bahuguna ji and Professor Priya Lakshmi ji and all the other faculty members who are here and dear students. As the theme is of environment, and I think, share my screen as well. As you all know that, we all live in the same environment, no matter which field we go to. We all have to breathe the same air, we all have to drink the same water, we all have to live in the same environment. Therefore it is very necessary to know about environment, what are our carbon footprints, what are our actions, what are the issues that are there. And Neha, please, depending upon the time, you tell me 5 minutes before I have to conclude, so I will be on time, right? Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
if you see these pictures, so this is the kind of environment that was, natural environment that has biodiversity, that has clean air, clean water, and all the organisms and all. And this was our habitat. Even if you see a man living on the land, that was our environment, that was our habitat. And slowly we developed, we innovated, and we changed everything. So we need to know about, what are these components of environment, why we need to be, should know about these things and what is happening. I'll not go into deep technical things, but I'll be giving you especially examples from the mountains because my area of expertise is in the mountains. I am from the mountain state, Uttarakhand itself. And most of the things that are changing is mainly in the mountains as well, when we talk about climate change and all. So we first come to biodiversity. What is biodiversity? All the flora and fauna, all the living organisms which are there on this planet, they constitute biodiversity, right? So we all know about different, species and all. There are many species which are yet to be explored, yet to be found every year, or so we come up with new organisms. COVID is a new so virus which has which we all know, which came 2-3 years back. Then comes that within biodiversity, there is something called species diversity. If you know snake is one species, but within snake, you can see there are so many different species of snake. Same is with flora, same is with fruit species. Mangoes, we know about mangoes and all, but there are so many, varieties of, say, mangoes. But the importance of all these species is that they are found in different habitats, and every of these have their own importance. Some species, they are found in desert areas, some in cold areas, some are found in waters, and they all have a role in the ecosystems. We'll be talking about ecosystems as well. And this is, yeah, another diversity is ecosystem diversity. So ecosystem, I think in Hindi, if you the word is paristitiki tantra. Paristitiki tantra or ecosystem is the relation between the abiotic and biotic factors which makes life possible on earth. The trees, they cannot grow without water, they cannot grow without soil, they cannot grow without air and all. So this combination of abiotic non-living and biotic organism, it constitute a ecosystem. And on earth, and if you see India itself, you will find so many different ecosystems. Like we have the desert ecosystem in Gujarat and Rajasthan area, then water ecosystem, all the rivers and lakes, all these are, then forest ecosystem. Then we have almost a coastline of 7,500 kilometers, which is one of the longest, coastline. So, and rainforest. So all these are ecosystem, and they have their own, benefits. If you see the desert ecosystem, it also helps us in our the rains and all. So when there is the air coming from Rajasthan and all, when it comes in contact with the monsoons and all, so it brings rain in Delhi and other regions. Similarly, the mountain ecosystems, when you have these glaciers, you have the snowfall, you have these forests, then these help in making the rivers perennial throughout the year. We get that water and all. It is because of the mountain ecosystem. So all these ecosystems are connected to each other. When we talk about the coastal and the marine ecosystem, so everything that is happening upstreams, in the mountains, in the desert and all, ultimately it comes to the oceans. And similarly, the oceans, we know about the monsoons and all, the how the water cycle takes place. So this is, we before we move into the other areas, so we have to know about biodiversity, ecosystems and all. And as I mentioned, that every single species on this earth has its importance. We only know about species which we come in contact with or we are familiar with. But every species, if you see in this black and white, we have kept over here this picture. So all these species, and still, as I mentioned, scientists are coming up with new species and all. So these species are very important for us, and we have to know what is the benefit of each species. Just giving an example of bees, they are such important creatures. They have been regarded as the most important, valuable creature on this planet. The reason is, out of 108 main crops that we humans consume, 98 are pollinated by bees. And what is happening over the period of, we are spraying too much of insecticide, pesticides, we are cutting the flora that is required for the bees and all, and slowly the bees are declining. In US, the almond growers, they have to hire the bees. But I give you the example of apple cultivation in Himachal Pradesh, where the bee cultivation was part of the tradition. It was part of the architecture. People used to install a beehive inside their houses when they were constructing the houses, or they used to have the log hives. But now, due to insecticide, pesticides, loss of flora, there are hardly any pollinators. And these orchardists, they have to hire the bees, from the beekeepers coming from other states. And ecosystem services, which was free of cost, now they have to pay almost 1,000 rupees for 15 to 20 days. The situation is alarming in China, where people have to pollinate with their hands. So they have to collect the pollens, and with the help of a paintbrush, they have to pollinate these crops. So you can imagine how difficult it is, because they have the manpower, they can do it. But it is very difficult for, feeding a population of 1.3 billion people if we lose all these pollinators. So this is, a benefit of just one species. Same as with tiger, leopards and all. They control the forest ecosystem. They maintain the population over there. If we eliminate these species, like, the climax species like tiger and leopards and all, then there will be more herbivores, and the whole ecosystem will be disturbed. Now, when it comes to ecosystem services, there are different services that we avail from the ecosystems. Number one is provisioning services. That is the direct services that we get from the ecosystem. And these are food, water, air, fuel wood, timber, whatever we, get the direct benefits. And everyone knows about these provisioning services. But there are three other services which we should be sensitive about. And whenever we are doing, any analysis, if you are mainly from the law background, so when you get a case related to environment, so you have to see from all these ecosystem services that how these ecosystem services have been benefited or have been, affected, whatever the case may be. Provisioning service, we know. Regulating service, the forest and all these ecosystems have a very important role to play when it comes to regulating services. Now, what are these regulating services? Is climate regulation. So all the natural hazards. So if there are no forest in the Himalayas, so every, the water that during the monsoon that we get, it will flow down and it will cause floods. But because of the forest, all these things, all this water is absorbed, and there are no such hazards. Same happens with your coastal and marine, where we have the mangrove forest. The mangroves act as a barrier, so there are no tsunamis and all. Then comes the cultural services. So cultural services or the aesthetic services are the services, like, that we get, especially, we go to a place, we say that, this place is very aesthetic. That is a cultural service that we are getting. Or if, any area is dedicated to any god or goddesses, that is also providing us cultural services. We hardly consider this thing. But if you go to a hotel in Mussoorie, the rooms that will be facing the Himalayas will be costing more than, someone any other room facing the wall or something, because you are availing the ecosystem services, though they charge you according to that as well, right? Same thing happens in Nainital. Any lake facing or any hotels near the lake will charge you more compared to other this thing. Then comes the supporting services. So all these cycles, life cycle maintenance, like your nutrient cycle, your carbon cycles and all, they are all part of the supporting service. Regulating service, another regulating service example that I will give you is the carbon sequestration. So you must have heard that, the trees, they sequester or absorb carbon. So that is again an ecosystem service that we, get from the forest and all the ecosystem. There has been an assessment of ecosystem services of Uttarakhand. So there were studies by Indian Institute of Management and all, and it is said that, all these ecosystem services, if we club together, so they provide a service of almost 45,000 crores of rupees, every year. So that is, and if we calculate it, per hectare, it is around 35 lakh rupees of services that we get from the ecosystems in Uttarakhand. So this is how, these things are evaluated. This is the importance. Now coming to ecosystem services from the highlands. So you see that mountains overall, I'm talking about the global mountains. So they cover around 24% of the land surface of our planet, and 20%, that is 1.2 billion of the world, human population lives in mountains or at their edges. And half of humankind depends on one way or the other on mountain resources. It is either the food, the fruits that are produced in the mountains, the handicraft, those. But the main thing is the ecosystem services is the water that flows from the mountains. If you take the example of Uttarakhand, so the main rivers, they originate from Uttarakhand, and people in the mountains, they struggle for a bucket of say water. Our women, they have to walk almost 1 kilometer to 2 kilometer carrying that, the load. We call it, gagri, which is made of copper or your other material, and they have to carry all that water for almost 1 kilometer to 2 kilometers daily. But at the same time, people enjoy luxury bath in shower and in their bathtub. And at the same time, we say, Punjab and the lower Tarai region of, say, Uttarakhand, as well as your UP, Uttar Pradesh, and Bengal, they are, very fertile lands. But it is because of the ecosystem service flow from the mountains. The rich, fertile soil every year, which, say, gets washed away, it deposit in these plains. It has deposited for millions of years, making it fertile. The water, the irrigation systems that are developed from the rivers make them, more fertile. Then provisioning services, as I mentioned earlier, also from the mountains. If you see, we have all these different kind of, say, our kidney beans. If you see here in the photograph, there are more than 15 varieties of kidney beans. Similarly, we depend upon different medicinal plants. Here is one mushroom which is called the Gucci mushroom. It is almost 30,000 rupees a kg. And if you see these worms like, things, I don't know if anyone knows about them. If I would have been in this class, I would have asked you. But this is called the Himalayan gold. It is called kida jari in ordinary or local language. It is a kida. It is a caterpillar, but it is a medicinal caterpillar, which is found in the upper Himalayas. It is called Yarsa gumba, and the cost of this in the international market is more than 20 lakh rupees a kg. And the farmers or the villagers in near these glaciers, they get around 5 lakh rupees a kg. But it is very difficult to get them and collect them. Almost 3,300 of these caterpillars make to 1 kg of these yarsagumba. Then all the fuel wood comes from the forest itself. Then you can see the water and the timber, everything comes from there. Regulating services, especially flood controls, I've already spoken about it. Carbon sequestration, the richer the forest, the more carbon sequestration, it sequesters more carbon. And the formula is very simple. So we calculate the biomass of the forest. It is done through sample methods, and whatever is the biomass, 50% of that is considered as the carbon stock in that. So if we have 1 ton of, the biomass, so it is 500 kgs of carbon in it, 50%. But that's how it is calculated. So there are estimations that have been done for entire Uttarakhand also. We call the mountains the water towers, as we mentioned that all the water and the main rivers, tributaries, they flow from the mountains. Regulate soil erosion. So all this forest and all, they regulate the soil. So that is also a service that is provided. Regulate natural hazards, the floods, especially the mountains, and the forest and all. So they avoid this thing. And climate regulation, they maintain the temperature and all. So these are the regulating service. So as a lawyer and as an environmentalist, so we always have to be very sensitive, and we also have to take into consideration when we are doing any studies, when we are studying any case, that what are the regulating services from that ecosystem which is in question or which is the part of the study, and how it has been affected. Cultural services, I already mentioned about the cultural services. And then coming to ecosystem services of the coastal and marine, again, like food, we get all the fishes and all from there. Regulating service, I mentioned the mangrove, how they regulate the tsunami. Then comes cultural and aesthetic service. It is the tourism, when we go, we go to beaches and all. And at the same time, these corals and all are there, which provide us aesthetic service. We go for snorkeling, we go for scuba diving, pay a huge amount, say more than 3,500 they charge for just one scuba dive, just to get a glimpse of these ecosystem services. So this is the importance of all the ecosystem services. Now, coming to the problems, especially in the mountains, there are many problems that are faced, especially when it comes to the environment. One is the forest degradation, which happens due to many reasons. One of the reason is deforestation for sure, because though most of the houses have Ujjwala scheme where free gas connections have been provided, but at the same time, to refill those gas cylinder every month, our communities, they don't have that much of money. There are hardly any sources of income. So the easy way is going in the forest and getting firewood, free of cost, due to which there are forest degradation, there are landslides, landslips every year, which causes degradation of forest, and deforestation also, road constructions and many other infrastructure which is coming up in the mountains, leading to forest degradation. So these are there. Then if you see, we say that we have forest cover of 45% in Uttarakhand, but again it depends what kind of forest is there. A forest with a oak, here also you can see on the right is a pine forest and on the left is our oak forest. Oak forest is so dense, you will find no light infiltrating into the ground. There will be good soil moisture. There is hardly any chances of fire in those kind of forests. There will be water springs or nalas over there, which meet the need of the community. There will be also diversity within, say in the oak forest, you will find rhododendron trees, you will find kafal, which is a fruit, wild fruit and all. You will find herbs and shrubs of, various importance. But if you see the pine forest, you can see it's all dry. There won't be any moisture content. It almost takes away the soil, the moisture as well, because the soil or the light infiltrates in these forests. There is hardly any dense crown and all. So we also have to see what kind of a forest it is and what kind of ecosystem services these kind of forests provide us. Pine is good for resin. We get resin which goes in the industry and all. Otherwise, we don't get, it's not a very good timber also if you extract pine, the resin from it. So again, when it comes to comparison of forest, we have to see broadleaves versus these needle trees. Again, soil degradation is a major problem when there is deforestation and all, and if the forest is not good, then the topsoil gets washed away, and you can see this photograph over here where you can see hardly there are any ground vegetation. So this also we have to consider, that is a major problem. And one of the biggest problem that we have been seeing in the mountains is the forest fire. Every year thousands and thousands of hectares of land, it gets it comes under fire. And just now I mentioned that from each hectare of forest there is an estimation of 35 lakh rupees of ecosystem services which flow annually. So you can imagine, you can calculate. So when you are doing these kind of cases, so you can refer to these kind of studies and say if there is a loss of 100 hectares, so you can multiply it with by 35 lakh rupees, and you can make your case strong that there has been an ecosystem loss of this much of money, apart from loss of biodiversity and flora and fauna. So this is, and one of the reason for forest fire is definitely negligence of the people, but also due to climate change. We will take up climate change separately. Due to climate change, the forest is becoming very dry, and every year this is causing more and more problem. Because of erratic rainfall, we are having dry, say winters and all. So there is hardly any moisture in those kind of forests, which leads to forest. Here are some facts about different disaster, mainly forest. I'll not go into detail, but I'll talk about Uttarakhand, which is the blue box here. Since December 2020, over 1,000 wildfires have been recorded in Uttarakhand, India. a state that has over 45.44% of forest cover, in contrast to India's overall forest cover of 21.67. And according to one estimate, the 2021 wildlife fires in Uttarakhand alone had led to the release of zero point 0.2 megatons of carbon dioxide, the highest since 2016. So you can imagine every year there are more than, in 2020, or like since 2020, there are 1,000 cases of wildfires. You can get these data also online and some of the say websites also. Glacier melt. Now glacier melt, like everything that is happening downstream in other states, anything, even someone is doing something in Delhi or something, and if that comes with the air, the climate, the temperature changes, and the aerosols, the particles that are suspended in the air, whatever we hear in say Haryana or Punjab, cases of stubble burning when they burn the residue of their paddy crop and all, that is ultimately going into the air, suspended in the air, and it reaches the glaciers, and slowly the temperature of these glaciers is increasing, and you must have heard that glaciers are receding. And here are some pictures, not from India, but from the other areas. You can see on the left, it was a situation somewhere long back 1914, and in 2021 you can hardly see any snow, but at the same time you can see vegetation coming up in those areas. Here is again Mount Everest and Khumbu glacier in 1921. You can see it is completely full, the glacier, and in 2008 you can see the contrast. Same is with Rongbuk glacier in Tibet. You can see all the snow gone. And if all the snow is gone in these glaciers, which are, if we just take the example of Uttarakhand itself, then the rivers that are coming from there, Gangotri, Yamunotri, and all these Ganga, Yamuna, all these rivers, they will slowly, they will die, and there won't be any water for irrigation. There won't be any water for drinking. You will be surprised to hear that there is a pipeline which goes from Tehri Dam all the way to Delhi to meet the water requirement of Delhi. So these are the ecosystem services which is going from here. But if there are no glaciers, no forests, then you can imagine the situation, what will happen. Landslides. Now, landslides is also very common in the mountains. Another thing that is coming up is the flash flood. Flash flood is the cloud, due to cloud burst. You must have heard, those who are from Uttarakhand, you all must be familiar. Those who are from the mountains, you must be hearing this thing. But you must have heard about Kedarnath floods in 2013, which happened due to a cloud burst, which happened up just above Kedarnath. And then there was a lake which got burst, and the entire thing got washed away. All the pilgrimages, more than 10,000 casualties happened over there. Similarly, in 2010, there was Ladakh disaster. In Ladakh, you know that in Ladakh, there is hardly any rainfall. In 1950s, all the IMD, the Indian Meteorological Department, they took away all their equipments, especially the rain gauge and all. But in 2010, there was a cloud burst, and I think more than 500 people where they lost their lives, but at the same time there was lots of loss to the infrastructure. So this is the Leh 2010 disaster, and I was working in Leh at that time. I was in Delhi when I heard about the Leh disaster, and I heard about floods and all. So I thought media is just creating a news out of it, because in Leh the city is up there and the river is down. For me, floods were like only caused due to overflow of rivers. But then when I went there, then I got to know that if you see the middle picture over here, somewhere over here the cloudburst took place, and it washed away all the infrastructure and all the mud, because these houses are very temporary. There is no linter. In the middle picture you will find this is a modern house, but in all the other houses there is hardly any linter system. They just make it from this locally available stone and mud. But now I think due to climate change, these people have to think what their infrastructure will be in coming years. And now cloudburst is becoming common in the Himalayas. Now, problems related to biodiversity. Again, Decline in endemic species. Endemic species are species which are found in a particular place, in a particular habitat. They are native of those places. But now we see that these kind of species which are confined to any area, they are declining and new species are coming up. Lantana, which is an exotic species, it was introduced by the government in areas where there was deforestation and all, and today lantana is a problem. You must have seen lantana near your university, near the riverbeds and all. It the flower is very appealing, orange flowers and all, but at the same time it is ruining everything. It is ruining the soil quality and all. So that's the change in biodiversity. And commercial agriculture replacing farm biodiversity. So all the crops that we had, all say traditional millets and all, slowly these are declining. All not only because of our greed, we want to grow commercial crops, but also at times we are unable to grow say the crops that were grown earlier because of the change in climatic conditions, water availability, weather conditions and all. Even in commercial agriculture, things are changing. If you know that in Ramgarh, in Nainital, Britishers, they first brought the apples over there in Ramgarh, and they developed a research center, and apple was popularized among the farmers. And slowly the weather changed due to climate change, and now you hardly grow farmers can hardly grow apples in Ramgarh. And in the valley region, now they have adopted crops like peach and other things. Similarly, in Kullu, now you can't grow apples in the valley anymore. The apple belt has shifted almost 70 kilometers towards Spiti, Lahore Spiti, where now you can grow apples. Earlier, you couldn't grow apples. And in the lower valley, now in Kullu, they are growing pomegranate, anar, and kiwis, peach, and apricots, these kind of crops. But at the same time, the traditional crops we have lost, and now we are reviving, and there are programs to revive these kind of traditional crops. So next year it has been announced as the year of millets. Also decline of the key species like leopards, tigers, they are declining. And as I mentioned at the start of my session, that they play a very important role. They maintain the ecosystem. The snow leopard maintains the ecosystem of the mountains, all the wild animals and all. Similarly, tiger, they maintain the ecosystem of the plain or the tarai forest systems. The bees, I already mentioned about bees. So the bees are declining everywhere. This is a global issue, and Einstein has said long back, if bees vanish from this earth, man will vanish within 4 years. So if all the bees will vanish, so the food security that is maintained by the bees, it will be lost, and humans will not be able to survive. And on the right, if you see all these logs with the hole, and this is a picture of a village called Namik, which is near Namik Glacier. There is no road connectivity, and this is the traditional ways of beekeeping. So they make these logs hollow, keep the bees, and these kind of practices are very sustainable. They don't keep the bees for their greed, but it's just for their need. Whatever they cultivate from it, it's hardly 2 kg per box, and they know when to leave the honey inside the logs for the bees. And the honey that they get is used for medicinal purpose or for barter system. There is a still barter system in this village where they exchange it with rice, kidney beans, sugar, and other things. Then human wildlife conflict. It is another problem because we have destroyed, degraded the forest ecosystem, the habitat of the animals and all. And now what they are doing is now they are coming to our villages, our residential areas, killing our livestock and all. So it's kind of a revenge. But at the same time, we are the people who are responsible for all this thing. Again, you can see elephants. So this used to be their corridor. We have developed roads over here. So this is somewhere near Corbett. Then climate change. Climate change, when you talk about climate change, mostly people think that climate change is warming of the climate, but it is not only just the warming of this planet or globe. It is more than that. So climate change, we have to see it from the holistic way. We mentioned about few things. So warming is one thing. The valleys are warming up in the mountains, drying up of springs. So because of climate change, the springs are drying. Then species moving upwards. So the species which I give the example of apple, but there are many wild species which are moving upwards. The temperate crops are replaced. We already mentioned about how the crops are more incidences of flash floods are happening. High incidence of cloudburst are happening. Melting of glaciers that is happening. More incidences of human wildlife conflict and erratic rainfall. The rainfall when we require at the time, when it is required for our crops or soil moisture, we are not getting rainfall at that time. This year, if you recall, the monsoon, the retreating monsoon was till 24th of October, which is kind of a harvesting time for paddy. So most of the farmers, they lost their crops because of the retreating monsoon. Also, sometimes the monsoons are so delayed. Now in the winter, since October, we haven't experienced any rainfall. But for the mountains, this winter rainfall is very important for the crops because the most almost 90% of the crop is rain fed. So we want that. Springs, all the springs need to be recharged. We by now, I think we used to get snowfall in many places, but that snowfall has declined, precipitation has declined. All these are signs of climate change, and we can see the evidences in the mountains. Another major problem, I don't think that I have to explain this to you, is the solid waste management. Wherever you go, whether it is our cities, whether it is the mountain hill stations, just see the nala or the stream that comes near of your university. It carries all the waste which is coming from the upper hills, the upper streams, and all those things. So this is a major problem again, which is causing air pollution. People are burning it, which is not the solution. We need to recycle, we need to reuse, refuse, all those things, the different R's and all. And every year, if you see the about waste, 800 climbers, they try to reach to the Everest, and 2 per day, and authorities in Nepal in 2019, they brought almost 11 tons of waste and 4 bodies of climbers in 2 months cleanup mission. And Nepalese government planned to conduct military-driven cleanup that involving 43 climbers from 13 April to 5th of June 2020 to bring down at least 35 tons of waste from the mountains. So this is what we have done to our mountains, and everything that is done upstream, it ultimately reaches the coastal and marine, where it impacts the coastal and marine ecosystem. Right at the beginning, I mentioned how the ecosystems are interlinked, and you can see the impact of whatever we are doing here. Whatever people are doing upstream, we are getting it here in Dehradun. Whatever we are doing it here, it is ultimately going down, impacting the say the aquatic ecosystem, and ultimately leading to the oceans and seas, where it is impacting the life over there as well. And impacts of our needs, our food requirement, definitely our food requirements also causes loss of biodiversity. We want different kind of fishes to to be eaten. Even if we are here in Dehradun, we want a fish that is say cultivated, or it is taken from the oceans. So it takes so much of energy and other things, over exploitations of these things. Our electricity needs more and more air conditions, more and more electricity consumption it causes. And new hydropowers are constructed because of that. Many people, they lose their houses. Just take the example of Tehri, where the entire villages have been drowned because of the dam construction. Our freshwater needs, the way we use our fresh water, as I mentioned, that in the mountains, women have to walk long distances to get just one bucket of water, whereas we enjoy a shower, or people enjoy their bath in the bathtub and all. So we need to be bit sensible what are our uses, what we can do as as a citizen, because we all have to live in the same planet, and we have to leave this planet for our future generation also. People talk about sustainability of Earth. I say Earth can sustain itself. If humans are eliminated from the Earth will recover within few decades, and the way we travel, so that also needs some focus. And opportunities are immense. You as citizens and we all can innovate and come up with sustainable solutions. And first of all, we have to be a sensible and sensitized citizen of this Earth, and then only we can do something to Mother Earth. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. And if there are any question and answers, happy to take them.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your kind and inspiring words. I hope the participants have also find it knowledgeable. With that, we have questions from the behalf of participants. Um, Number one, what should be the ideal solution, in your opinion, to compensate for ecosystem loss?
Yeah, see, ecosystem loss is either the person or the party which is responsible, they need to compensate, right? But cases are being made for, say, for a state like Uttarakhand or the mountain state, where we have been making case that either the government should pay for the compensate for these ecosystem services. That is one thing. Or there are already in the market, there are like say players which want to contribute uh, to pay for these ecosystem services, especially carbon credits. If you must have heard that any plantation which is done after say 2007, that qualifies for ecosystem services, and if you register it, then you get payment for these. But at the same time, we have to develop mechanism, as you mentioned in your question, that who and how will people compensate for these ecosystem losses. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, we have what do you think should be done to protect the environmental sustainable practices which have a major role in ecosystem services?
Yeah, see, our lifestyles, those are the main things. As citizens, as I mentioned earlier, ki no matter which field you go in, we have to breathe the same air, we have to use the same water, we have to live in the same planet. So one is our sustainable ways of living, our lifestyle, those kind of things we have to change. At the same time, at the policy level, there needs to be policies which are pro environment, so that is the part of the government which they definitely take. And at the same time, whether it's is easy to formulate policies and laws, but are they being followed or not? I think lawyers like you all, who will be in future, you will be there in the, say, in the market. So you all have to make these kind of cases as well, whether all these environmental cases are there. There is huge scope of environmental lawyers. You just see the payment that the environmental lawyers take. So I think the lifestyle changes, policies, laws, and all have a major role in this. And at the same time, we need to follow these laws.
Thank you, sir. The next question we have, how development projects in mountain impact the climate in that area?
Yeah, see, depends what kind of a project it is, right? If a development project, so one is the road and all. So now there are laws. If you are, cutting so many trees and all, at the same time, you have to come up with projects where maybe as part of the CSR of the same, organization which is building these roads and all. So they also have to do plantations related to that. But we have to see how development and environment can go hand in hand. If we are making a loss somewhere, we need to compensate it somewhere else. Development is also important. But again, then one is these kind of development project, but at the same time, there are many other environmental projects also which are being run by governments and NGOs, which are mainly for the benefit of the environment as well, whether they are just plantations or they are related to ecosystem services. And also there are different international NGOs, our state governments, our central government, Ministry of Environment and Forest Climate Change, they are also having projects related to environment. So yeah, so that is the other side as well.
Thank you, sir. And the last question we have, is climate change a new phenomenon or has been there for a long period of time but recognized now?
See, climate change has been happening for billions and billions of years. That's how this Earth, today we are here because of climate change itself, right? But it came to this stage, and it is a stage where we humans and most of the biodiversity can survive in it, right? It is because of the humans. There have been studies and all. The way climate change is now progressing, it is because of our anthropogenical events. That is, our actions are causing it as at a much higher rate. So if you see the climate models and all, you will see, after the this industrial revolution and all, suddenly the CO2 and all these emissions have gone up very drastically, which are causing a problem. So it was not something new, but it was happening at its own pace, nature's own pace. But we humans have just accelerated it, and therefore we can see the consequences as well.
Thank you so much, sir. We couldn't be more thankful for your kind presence for today's session. Now, I would like to request our chairperson, ma'am, to present her worthy remarks.
Thank you so much, Neha. And nice to see you again, Dr. Pradeep Mehta, sir. Though it's on the online mode, it's always been wonderful interacting with you. Yeah. So thank you so much for actually obliging us and then joining us again here this afternoon. This was indeed one of those talks which was very crisp and extremely candid, I must say. So today's talk, we had a 360 degrees view on ecological consciousness, as I would like to, as it was put forth, with focus on Uttarakhand, home turf of Dr. Mehta. And then, of course, it was a very impactful presentation with pictorial representation of biodiversity, especially the species diversity, and what exactly are the ecosystem services, whether it is provisioning, regulating, cultural, or the supporting services that actually focus or rather contribute to the preservation or conservation of biodiversity at large, which is very quintessential for us to ensure that more damage is not done. Rather, we contain the damage that's already been done. So today's talk had been an eye-opener where we did get to know quite a bit about the local, or rather Uttarakhand, provisioning services, the different kinds of beans, for instance, about 15 kinds, and the Kida Jadi, which sir was talking about, and then the mushroom, the Gucci mushroom, and what exactly the challenges that they face in the mountains for water, and also the various cultural services which contribute to the aesthetics have been well touched upon by sir in his talk today. And of course, he did touch upon my most, I must say that one of the favorite topics as far as Uttarakhand region is concerned, about the pine forest cover taking over the native forest cover, and as a result of which creating quite a bit of diversity, biodiversity loss, as has been witnessed in the mountain areas with the chirpine, which is actually an invasive species, and then it actually took over most of the indigenous species here. And then sir discussed about the glacial melts and at length, and of course problems like lantana here, and then ecornia deep south, because ecornia is this water weed which was introduced into the lakes in the south, and then if you were to look at it now, it has led to a lot of reclamation and then drying of all the lakes and the water bodies there. So indeed an extremely, I must say, an eye-opening talk by Professor Mehta. I must thank you once again, sir, for sharing your perspective and views with the students and environmentally conscious people at large who joined us this afternoon. And I must say, mountains to oceans, I guess I've been lucky, much blessed, because I happen to witness both, what happens in the mountains. Been here as a rather by domicile. And since I come from the beach, I come from the sea coast. So the effect of, this connect between the mountains to the plains to the seas, this is something which I had actually observed, and you're very rightly put it that the ecosystem interlink is something that we need to look at, and not in isolation, the various ecosystems. So with that, I'd like to thank you once again on behalf of Vasundhara The Green Society, and all my students out there who put in every effort to kind of get this happening. And thank you once again, Dr. Mehta, for being with us. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Over
Thank you
to
so
you,
much.
Neha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Next, I would like to ask the convener, Mr. Shaurya Negi of Vasundhara The Green Society, to present their vote of thanks.
It's a matter of pride for me that I am proposing the vote of thanks of this day. I, Shaurya Negi, on behalf of Vasundhara The Green Society, Law College Dehradun, Faculty of Uttaranchal University, would like to bring my humble thanks to Mr. Pradeep Mehta for taking out his busy time from his busy schedule and motivating us with his presence. A big thanks to our Pro Vice Chancellor, Dean, Law College Dehradun, Professor Dr. Rajesh Bahuguna, sir, for gracing us and helping us bringing this program to you. Further, I would like to thank our respected chairperson, Dr.Lakshmi Priya Vinjamuri ma'am, for motivating and always having our back. I also want to thank all the members of the team VTGS who are aware of their task and concerned about their results, as well as all the participants who participated in this event and made it a successful one. Once again, I would like to state that we are glad to have you all here. It has remained a pronounced pleasure. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Once again, while concluding this session, I would like to thank you, sir, Dr. Pradeep Mehta, sir, for being here today. Now, I would like to seek the permission of Chairperson ma'am to end this session.
Yeah, we meet again tomorrow afternoon, 3:30. Yes, Neha?
Yes, ma'am, for the
Yeah.
next day. Okay.
In continuation of the series. So thank you once again, Dr. Mehta. And then, yes, I announce the session closed for today.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day.